everyone, and welcome back to Denver Transit Improvements, where I plan new ways to improve transit connections across the city of Denver and the 7 metro counties. Today, I want to look at Southmoor Station, one of the most infamous and badly designed stations in Denver County, and one of the worst on the network. Now, Southmoor is served by currently the E and H lines. The F line is now gone. The station is right along I-25, and the main issues that it currently faces is that it is pretty much inaccessible from all sides. And it's also a park and ride that is not very well used. It does not feature a parking garage, it just features large surface parking lots, and then this pedestrian tunnel underneath the interstate to the station platform. That's the only way to access the station. You can't currently access it from this neighborhood or really in any other way. So, not very easy to get to, not very pleasant to be at. It's really no wonder why this station is a failure. So, today I'm going to do a rundown of everything that I have planned to improve this station and make it more just usable and just a nicer area around the station as well. So this is the station platform, which would pretty much be unchanged. And you have the elevators and the stairs down to the underground walking path. Now, you can't get to this neighborhood here. I think that should be the first thing to be fixed. Now, this is just like low density suburban development, but at least being able to access this area would be a major improvement. So let's just get started on that. Now, there are 6 houses here that back up to the station platform. If any one of them would be willing to allow some of their land to be reutilized as a small walking path, or the entire house could be bought by the city council and then cleared in order to create some sort of like park as well as walking paths and maybe even some bike parking, that would just connect right into the station here. All of which is possible. I mean, there's 6 houses here. If not, you could also extend the pedestrian underpass here. It goes under the highway. It could also go under one of these houses and then come out here on this corner between Hillcrest and Canyon. This section is basically just a patch of grass that could be purchased by the city and then utilized for a new elevator and stairwell, allowing riders from the station to walk underneath and then come out here. Either way, a connection to this neighborhood is definitely one of the early steps. Not very hard to do, but would definitely improve the connectivity of the station. And then the other thing that should be high on the priority list is this. This is kind of a pedestrian path that I designed that would allow easy access to the Thomas Jefferson High School here from this neighborhood and Southmoor Station. It could be literally just a little concrete path, no more than like 6 feet wide, that could snuggle right between these 2 houses and then go over towards the high school, which would be incredibly useful for students that take transit. Now, on the other side of the station is where most of the development will happen. Now, this is like the park and ride lots and the bus loop. Now, my first plan was to keep the bus loop, but instead, this center part of the bus area, the buses will now board in the middle, and then there will be a dedicated crossing here that will make the whole area just feel more easy to use and more human scale. And then these parking lots will be redeveloped. This is almost 10 acres of land to develop. Surely a lot of this land could be redeveloped into mixed-use urban development. I think a good example of how to utilize this could even be taken from the local areas, such as like this, the District by Windsor Apartments, which is just a very nice mid-rise apartment development, or from a more international perspective, a lot of these sections, this is where the new roads would be, preferably free of cars. These areas could be very well developed into large development blocks reminiscent of a superblock in Barcelona or Paris. And not to mention, the whole point is just to increase the connectivity of the station, so these walking paths will allow Easy walking from the station over and then down to these apartments here without having to cross any like grass or fences, or there are so many barriers between this apartment complex and the entrance to the station. It's actually absurd. So removing some of those would definitely make the station more accessible and would bring riders in. Next, along this grass patch here, these three rectangles will be sections for large covered bike parking, allowing bikers to easily park their bikes here in a covered structure, and then they can just walk right into the station. What else? This is a walking path that will go up towards the north, accessing all of this current existing development. Now, I have been to this station before, not frequently, but I believe I've been to this theater when it was open, and this Chili's. I have been to this Chili's, you bet. And I walked through grass and parking lots, and it was definitely not a pleasant experience to get to this Chili's. It's like the infrastructure of this area actively deters you from using transit. So, a large, wide pedestrian walking path through this section would be very useful for these businesses as well as for future redevelopment. Like I said, this theater is no longer open, so this building could be torn down or repurposed, whatever. And then the walking path will turn here and go along where this handicap parking used to be. This can be redeveloped just into a walking area. And I know that kind of sounds bad to redevelop handicap parking into a walking path, but trust me, it would be fine because this isn't all that much. And also, if you're going to keep this building, the entrance to the building is here. Why was there ever handicap parking on this side? That's super far from the main entrance. Just make this whole section handicap parking and then remove this, and it would be much more efficient. Anyway, the walking path will continue north up to this apartment building, which is located here, and then this other one. And it would also be possible to put in a crossing here and another dedicated walking path to this King Supers, maybe even some bike parking here as well, just to make the whole section around the station as walkable as possible. Speaking of walkability, this intersection at Magnolia Way and Monaco Parkway should definitely be widened and made into a more transit accessible site with at least 30-foot wide crossings and more pedestrian infrastructure, including separating the bike lanes better and just creating more of a cohesive section here that will allow someone coming from the station to easily walk over into this neighborhood or like towards this eastern section without having to wait for 30 minutes to cross Monaco Street. And finally, you've probably noticed this blue line. This is a bus route that I was planning to use to connect the cities of the area. Now, if I zoom out, you can see this is the bus route. It will go both ways in kind of this loop section and will connect Dayton and Southmoor. That way, the bus will have easy access to get riders to and from the light rail stations, but also to serve this corridor on Hamden, which is very densely populated. You have a lot of big apartment buildings here, and also some areas that could be redeveloped into transit-oriented spaces. Down south here is pretty much the same. I feel like this loop would be a very useful feeder route to both Dayton Station and to Southmoor, and a lot of bus routes like this that could be more reliable, could even be partly a BRT. I was thinking that, it's a semi-BRT with dedicated lanes on Hamden. The other streets, I don't think it would need dedicated lanes because they're, like, for example, will never be traffic on Nassau Avenue or anything. But there would need to be a road extension built here just so that the bus doesn't have to go down and then all the way out of Dayton again on this loop. That would just decrease efficiency. So having this like cohesive loop that goes both ways would definitely bring riders into both stations. And that's just my first thoughts. I may expand on this in the future, but just a lot of simple things that just go down to land management around a station that will determine how useful it will be. Here's some other notes I have on Southmoor is that it needs to have an addition of bike lanes, as well as this pedestrian tunnel should be made nicer. The pedestrian tunnel is kind of dingy. In the future, maybe making it brighter and wider could make the station a nicer place to be and make it not feel as run down as it often does. As to the biking, I believe every station on the RTD network should have at least like a 1 mile radius of bike-centric infrastructure around the station, a lot of dedicated bike lanes on wider streets and crossings, pavers, and other indications of like legal biking spaces. For a station with a lot of suburban development around it, that would be one of the best ways to bring riders in. Aside from developing the area right around the station into a more densely populated and transit-oriented area, the biking could really help. And I feel like bike lanes that extend up Happy Canyon Road here to like this section, biking through this neighborhood all the way towards Dayton, maybe connecting in with some of the trails here that I know run all the way over towards Cherry Creek Reservoir, all of which would make the station just easier to access and therefore would bring ridership in. I feel like Southmoor definitely has a disadvantage of being right next to an interstate, and just short of closing the interstate entirely and redeveloping the whole section into transit-oriented development, which could be done in the distant future. The near future should really be smaller changes like this, such as adding bike infrastructure around the station and opening a pretty underutilized park and ride up into better development and land usage around its site. The evidence does show that Southmoor is a pretty useless park and ride. Not many people are utilizing the station for its current intended purpose, so adapting the station into something that could actually bring riders in just seems like a no-brainer. Anyway, that is all for today. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode where I plan more transit to other places. Bye.